In the skies of World War II, the roar of engines and the whistle of bullets composed a deadly symphony. Every aerial battle was a dance of speed, precision, and strategy, and every pilot knew that, at the most unexpected moment, they could run out of ammunition. In those decisive seconds, the difference between life and death ceased to depend on gunpowder and began to rely on the mind, instinct, and daring. When the projectiles were depleted, the battle did not end. It merely transformed. Instead of retreating, some Allied pilots resorted to ramming attacks, risky maneuvers that turned their own planes into controlled projectiles. This technique, known as ramming, involved deliberately colliding with the enemy aircraft, striking with wings, tail, or fuselage. It was a maneuver that demanded meticulous calculation and extreme courage. A poorly chosen angle could destroy one's own plane instead of the enemy's. However, when executed correctly, a ramming attack could neutralize the adversary surprisingly effectively, demonstrating that audacity could be as lethal as any machine gun. No less important was psychological warfare, an invisible and subtle weapon that pilots used to sow fear and confusion among the enemy. Low passes, abrupt turns, dangerously close approaches to enemy aircraft or even airfields were designed not only to intimidate, but to force the opponent into mistakes. A pilot without ammunition could create the illusion of superiority and strength, using aggressive maneuvers that made opponents react hastily and vulnerably. The mind became a battlefield parallel to the skies, and every movement sent a silent message. Be careful, don't underestimate me. Creativity was perhaps the most fascinating tactic of all. In desperate moments, pilots found ingenious ways to use their environment and their aircraft as improvised weapons. Some used the wings or tail of their planes to strike adversaries, while others employed tactics that defied logic, inducing controlled collisions, manipulating the trajectory of debris, or even dragging cables and detached parts of their own planes to interfere with enemy controls. Each maneuver became a testament to ingenuity, improvisation, and courage, a mind versus mind game where speed and altitude added lethal risk to every decision. These tactics, though desperate, reflected a fundamental truth of aerial warfare. Victory is not always achieved by shooting first or faster. Adaptability, inventiveness, and the ability to improvise under pressure could mean the difference between returning home alive or being lost in the skies. Pilots who mastered these techniques challenged not only their enemies but the very limits of war itself, redefining what it meant to be a combatant in the air. Even in the most heroic accounts, a pattern emerges. The pilot without ammunition becomes a creative strategist, capable of turning vulnerability into an unexpected advantage. Every ramming attack, every intimidating maneuver, and every clever improvisation demonstrated that when the cannons fell silent, the mind kept firing. In that instant, aerial warfare was no longer just a matter of machines and bullets. It was a duel of ingenuity, courage, and audacity in its purest form. As World War II raged across every corner of the globe, Allied pilots faced not only the enemy's firepower, but also the constant threat of running out of ammunition. Some of the most astonishing accounts come from the Pacific Theater, where American fighters, once out of bullets, resorted to desperate maneuvers that today seem almost unbelievable. A notable example is that of U.S. Lieutenant Charles "Charlie" Brown, whose machine gun ran out of ammunition during a combat over New Guinea. Instead of retreating, Brown chose to employ a ramming attack. With a combination of speed and precision, he struck the wing of a Japanese bomber, destabilizing it enough to force it to crash. The act was extremely risky, but his daring saved his comrades from a certain ambush. These kinds of maneuvers, though unconventional, demonstrated that a pilot could use ingenuity and courage as weapons as lethal as any cannon. Other accounts highlight the use of psychological warfare in its purest form. During the battles over Europe, Allied pilots, often outnumbering the enemy but low on ammunition, flew aggressive formations around smaller enemy squadrons, performing unpredictable maneuvers and dangerously close approaches. The psychological pressure was so intense that many enemy pilots rushed into risky maneuvers or even made fatal errors, surrendering victories without firing a single shot. Even extreme creativity became a rule in the air. Some pilots used parts of their own planes as improvised projectiles, dragging propeller debris or cables to interfere with enemy controls. Others executed maneuvers so daring they bordered on sheer recklessness. Controlled collisions, low passes between combat formations, and precise ramming attacks. Every action required a delicate balance of ingenuity, bravery, and near-surgical precision. In the sky, every second could determine the fate of a pilot and his squadron. For those facing ammunition shortages, creativity and audacity were not merely tactics, they were a matter of survival. Every ramming attack, every psychological maneuver, every clever improvisation carried the certainty that one mistake could be fatal, and the possibility that an act of courage could change the course of the battle. The stories of Allied pilots who faced the sky without ammunition are not just tales of courage, they are reminders of the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. In the most desperate moments, when the roar of engines filled the air and every decision could mean life or death, these pilots transformed fear into strategy, vulnerability into opportunity, and improvisation into survival. Their legacy extends beyond the battlefield. It teaches us that true strength is not measured solely by the weapons we wield, but by the creativity, courage, and determination we bring to the fight. Even when all seems lost, even when the odds are stacked against us, the mind remains a weapon that cannot be silenced. In the end, Allied pilots who mastered these unconventional tactics not only survived, they became legends of the sky. Their stories remind us that aerial warfare depends not only on weapons but on the human spirit, the ability to think quickly, adapt, and turn vulnerability into advantage. When the bullets ran out, the heroes kept fighting, proving that audacity, intelligence, and bravery could become the most powerful weapons of all. And so, in the skies of World War II, when all seemed lost and the guns fell silent, Allied pilots discovered an immutable truth. Even without ammunition, human ingenuity never surrenders.